morning, and thank you very much, Deb, and thank you all for joining us on this sixth in a series. I'm coming to you from a temporary office today, and I will say there's a bit of construction going on in this building, so last minute I had to relocate to the other end of the house. So if you hear some hammering and drilling and sawing, maybe it sets the mood for Passivhaus construction. I'm not too sure, but if there are any technical problems, it's because I'm that much further away from a router. But without further ado, I want to welcome you here today. I hope that everyone is healthy and safe, and that you'll have some really good questions for us by the end. And then, of course, as we have with all of our guests, you will have learned a lot. So let me get the ball rolling by turning off my web camera and going to our presentation. Thanks again for being. I wanted just to welcome everybody here and let you know that we have Josie Constantini from Skiltus with us today, and I know we're going to have a good conversation. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Chris Ballard. I'm the CEO of Passivhaus Canada. For the last 6 months, I've been the CEO, so it's been a wonderful learning experience. I've always been interested in high-performance buildings, near zero buildings, and quality buildings, and Passivhaus brings that all together for me. I've been the CEO, as I said, for the past 6 months, but I've done a bunch of other things in my life. Among them, I've been a town councillor, I've been a consumer advocate, and it's taught me an awful lot about what we need to do with buildings, with greenhouse gas and the climate crisis, those kinds of things. So why Passivhaus Canada? As I said, my previous background really brought to my attention the need for this type of building and this type of a deep energy retrofit. And the standards that Passivhaus brings to the table are unparalleled, quite frankly. And I have had the opportunity to study many other standards from across our country and North America. And I am, as I've said many times, utterly convinced that Passivhaus building and retrofit standards address many of the housing environmental issues we face today. So I wanted to welcome Josie Constantini today. A few of the buildings she's involved with are there on the right-hand side. Josie's a certified Passivhaus consultant with a bachelor's degree in architectural science and a master's degree in building science, and she tells us in brackets almost. Josie and team at Skiltus have been successful in delivering Passivhaus projects like the Parkdale Landing, a retrofit to the Passivhaus standard, a Houston Street Baptist Church, and some other buildings as well. And I really look forward to her expertise. I know that Josie's well known for speaking, as we say, architect speak and trade speak, and being able to translate between the two. And that's super critical to a successful project. So we'll be looking forward to that conversation. But before we get there, I want to take a minute just to talk about Passivhaus and let you know, and for those of you, again, who are new to this broadcast, here is a picture of Saskatchewan Conservation House. For people who think that Passivhaus is a European standard, selling European components into the North American and Canadian market, I'm here to tell you that's not quite accurate. Saskatchewan Conservation House, 1977, the height of the OPEC oil embargo, the government of Saskatchewan wanted to explore ways to keep folks warm in wintertime. They commissioned a group of scientists led by Dr. Orr to build a house to see how little energy a house could use and how comfortable and healthy a house could be. Dr. Orr and his team built Saskatchewan Conservation House in 1977. And this is one of the many buildings that European scientists came and visited, explored all the data from this house as they were developing new European standards. Those standards went on to become Passivhaus standards. And today we have the Passivhaus Institute, which is located in Germany. but Passivhaus Institute recognizes the Saskatchewan Conservation House as one of its ancestors. So we all should be proud about playing a role in the foundation, the beginnings of Passivhaus standards. So moving along, what are the advantages of a passive house? Well, you build a passive house and you build it better. You make sure you have a super insulated building envelope, that you have high quality windows with solar orientation, that you have a ventilation system with heat recovery, that you are thermal bridge free, that you're airtight, and you feel better. You have year-round stable indoor air quality and temperature. You have a quiet and comfortable environment throughout the changing seasons, that there is a substantial reduction in energy use and operating costs, and that you have a simple to use, durable system. And of course, all of that together gives you priceless peace of mind. So about Passivhaus Canada, we are a not-for-profit advocacy organization representing professionals, builders, tradespeople, public policy makers. Our mission is to make the international Passivhaus standard of building performance understood, achievable, and adopted by government, industry, professionals, building suppliers, and the public right across Canada. And I would encourage you to become a member. If these are things that you believe in your profession or your life, please become a member and explore our education and information about Passivhaus standards on our website. There's lots of information there about our performance standards for professionals, trades, government, and the public. So I seem to have lost a page, but we will back up. What I will do is I'm going to go back a couple of pages to Josie's page, and I will invite Josie to turn her computer on, or to turn her camera on. I'm going to put my camera on as well. There we are. We're all set. So I've also, Josie, I've also kept the background on with three of the buildings, three of the projects that I know you're involved with, and maybe we can talk about those in a minute. I'll bring them up again in a minute, but turn them off right now so you and I can have our conversation. So thank you very much for joining us today. And maybe we can start off by a very simple question. How did you end up in the career you're in right now?
Well, for my bachelor's degree, I went to the University of Toronto. I studied architecture there, and then my goal was always to go and do my master's in architecture. I kind of got a connection through this job. I was going to do it for the summer, get hands-on experience, work closer to the construction side of things, understand how it works. And the end is kind of there. I fell in love with it. I didn't end up leaving. I asked if I could stay and kind of make this the direction I wanted to go. So end was history. So that was back in 2016. And since then, I've kind of learned the ropes through experience. And in 2017, I believe, I started, I was lucky enough that they would let me do my master's part-time while I was still working full-time here. So I was able to do my master's degree in building science. And in 2017, by pure chance, is also when our company got introduced by an architect and a developer into Passivhaus. So it was weird how that worked at the same time. I started looking into high performance building for my master's degree, and we got handed a Passivhaus project. So all in all, I took that as a sign and said, well, must be the concept for me, and we've been working on it ever since then. Kind of tried to make it our niche. So.
Right, and the company you work with, Skiltus, tell me a little bit about that company. I mean, they seem to be doing a lot of Passivhaus. They seem to be filling that that market right now. So tell me a little bit about them.
So they've been around, I was told, since 1952 as a company. So almost 70 years now, I believe. So they are a family company. It was started by Harm Skiltis back in the day, and he handed it down to Hank Skiltice, who handed it over to his cousin now, who is the current president, Henry. And they have been known to be focusing on their quality for many, many years now. So they think the transition into Passivhaus was almost seamless. We've always tried to be quality builders, so that was really easy for us to understand why we were doing certain things. And it was really our relationship with an architect and a client who was interested in Passivhaus. They kind of came to us, who we've been working with for years, and said, will you take this jump with us as a construction manager, and let's dive into this project. So it's really them and our history of quality of work that kind of made that great partnership, and it's been great. I mean, I have nothing but great things to say about this company.
So normally one of the questions I ask is why Passivhaus standards, but you were already investigating high performance buildings for your degree when Passivhaus sort of in your lap. But from a professional perspective, you know, what is attractive about Passivhaus standards to for you?
Oh, well, definitely the fact that it improves the occupant comfort. I mean, the whole reason we build buildings is for the occupants. So improving that comfort, the indoor air quality, of course, that's something that's so desirable. Also, you know, I'm not I lived in Toronto for a few years in a stingy little semi for a bit, and we had huge problems with our front doors, just gusts of cold air coming in all the time. We were always freezing, you know, on the tile floors and everything. So it's always been kind of an interest. I feel like everybody's got a little bit of a reason to look into it. So that was always interesting to me, figuring out how to make that envelope tighter. That's really an attractive quality of the Passivhaus standard. And of course, studying through my master's, we learn a lot about trying to save the buildings that we have now, and you know, our carbon budget and everything like that. So all those things combined just make Passivhaus a really good standard to look into. It's kind of addressing things from all angles in terms of saving money, reusing the buildings we already have to make them better, and whatnot. So.
Yeah, but and I find, you know, one of the things I've learned over the 6 months I've been here is that you know, a lot of focus in Canada, well, around the world really, is about energy, low energy, low energy, low energy, with sometimes not enough regard to a whole of building approach. What about the people inside the building? Do they have the fresh air they need? You know, is the building draft free? So you may have a low energy building that's really a lousy place to live or to work in. And Passivhaus sort of has done it the other way, from my understanding, that if you build for health, you build for comfort, you build for resilience, you build quality, lo and behold, you also get low energy or zero energy buildings. So, and you get a place that you love to live in or love to work in.
Exactly, and it's really the combination of all of those things that makes it attractive for clients and builders and occupants and everything. It's really that whole concept. And one of the things I also like about Passivhaus is, I don't know if it's just the way they lay out their standard, but it's fairly simple to grab the concept right from reading a few pages about it, kind of getting the concept. You know, they lay those 5 principles out right away. You kind of understand how they're cutting things down and how they're making it better right off the top. So I think that goes well with clients looking into it, and also people we are introducing to try and get on board. It's easy for them to, you know, get the concept without having to do too much research or too much work into it.
And that's an interesting point you raise, because you find that clients come to you and say, we want a Passivhaus building, or do they simply say, we want a high performance building, and then you introduce them to Passivhaus? How does that work? Has it changed even since you began to build Passivhaus?
It has been primarily Passivhaus, but there has definitely been buildings that we're bidding on where we go in with a proposal and they say they want these targets and everything, and they're open to all standards, and we do bring up Passivhaus. So there has been those instances, but a lot of the times, at least for the few that we've done recently, it has been they kind of caught the bug or heard it was going, because it has been going around Hamilton, so it's good for us. It's kind of flying around. So when they hear that, they ask us, you know, what's that about? And then they bring up other standards, you know, how we've heard of this, how is it similar to LEED? How is it similar to net zero? And then we kind of go over those comparisons, and then they make the final choice on, where they want to aim for their standard.
Yeah. So it's really good to hear that just general awareness of Passivhaus standards is growing, and we find that in Canada, Passivhaus really has its roots in British Columbia, but it has been spreading across the country. In fact, this week we launched together with Maison Passive Quebec our first online course, pathways to certification in French. So even in Quebec, in Quebec, it's growing. In Ontario, it's growing, and the demand for courses here continues to grow. So all a good thing. So when you talked about some of the attributes of Passivhaus, but you've done some big projects where that people aren't living in them. What are your clients, say the YMCA or Intact, Indwell, what are they looking for in a building that Passivhaus meets that need?
Well, for both of those, actually, for the YWCA and for Indwell, they're both right now doing housing for lower income families. So they are a specific bracket of people they want to move into these homes. So they are focusing their goals of both companies are health and wellness. They want to ensure that their occupants get the best. You don't need to have a lot of money to get a safe and warm and comfortable place to live. So that's kind of what they're trying to do, make sure everybody can have a comfortable place to live. So they really focus on occupant comfort. It's their number one thing. They, of course, getting low energy costs are desirable for anybody, but that's not their main goal. Their main goal is the occupants. They have known to reduce tenants' level of risk, more comfortable space they live in. It just increases your quality of life. And also the resiliency ties in there as well. They want a building that these people can live in for a long time and not shuffle them around because they need to redo this and redo this. They want to invest one time a lot of money and time in one building at one time to make it last a long time. They don't want to have to keep going by. They want to build these buildings for a lifetime to be used in just as good quality as they were the first day they were built as when they were complete. So I think their overall goal as companies is definitely all about the occupants and how they live and the quality they really get to live in.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, what you're echoing what I'm hearing from social housing providers in other parts of the country and in the United States, where comfort is number one, but reduced operating costs, reduced maintenance costs because of the quality of the build, the design of the build, make Passivhaus quite affordable. And maybe that's one of the attributes I need to start talking more about, that we talk about health and comfort and resiliency, but it's also quite affordable way to build when you factor in all of those other savings, which we can talk about in a minute. But what I wanted to do right now, I just want to turn the screen back on. I've got 3 projects here that we can see. And can you talk about what's the building at the top? Tell us a little bit about that building.
So the building at the top is actually the same as the bottom left.
Right.
It is 500 James Street, also known as Houston Street Baptist Church. They combined, so Indwell Community Homes, they did a partnership with the church. So it is 45, I believe, 45 apartments in 4 stories, and attached on the left-hand side there is a gymnatorium. So it'll be where the church does their service, as well as a gym for their youth programs. And then the main floor, they'll have a couple of community spaces, maybe some that can be rented out. And then the basement, they have all their youth programs. So it is designed and on track to be a certified Passivhaus.
Wow, great.
Build.
And I mean, that's a substantial building, and it's a multi-use building. So it's more than residential. It's more than sort of commercial space or church space. It does a variety of different And Passivhaus was able to meet the need? Clearly.
Yeah. It was great. We didn't really have any struggles here. There was a couple of things here that we changed from our previous one. One was we put a garbage room in, but we took it outside of the building envelope, which was something that we learned here. So it's in the building, but outside of the building in terms of Passivhaus and building envelope.
Right.
But yeah, we were able to meet all our needs. The church was really on board with Indwell's kind of past of going towards a healthy living environment. The church was all on board, and they are more than happy to partake in that.
So we have an example of a not-for-profit organization and, of course, a church not finding Passivhaus inexpensive or too expensive. I mean, moving ahead. So it wasn't a huge premium, and they're able to buy into it. How about the building in the middle? What can you tell us about this building? Oh, Deb, have I lost Josie, or have you guys lost me? Do we have a technical glitch here?
Well, a little bit. I think it looks like Josie's frozen on the screen, and she's just trying to log on again with her audio.
Well, we can talk among ourselves, and I will continue to make the pitch for Passivhaus. There you are, Josie. You're back.
Oh, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay, I thought it was at my end. We're just going to get some comments about the center picture.
The center picture on the right-hand side?
Yes, the right-hand. Yeah, sorry, the right-hand side.
Okay, that is another Indwell project that is, it's called Parkdale Landing. It was also known as 205 Melvin. It is the same concept as 500 James Street. So I believe there we had 50 apartments on 3 stories, and they have 2 commercial units on the first floor. So they have, I think now they have a drugstore there and a variety store on the first level there. And they have a community kitchen in there, basement with big storage and laundry and everything. So more the same concept there, and lots of community spaces for the tenants themselves to kind of gather and hang out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds good. Okay. Very good. We'll probably have some questions about this. Usually there's a technical question or two when we get to the end. So folks, feel free to write your questions in, and Deb will bring them up as time permits. But I'm going to turn that screen off for a second. And I guess what people are always interested to hear about are some of the lessons learned. You know, what are some of the key lessons? If you're building to a Passivhaus standard, what for the first time, what do you need to know?
Well, it's a long list. It's not scary. It's not to frighten people off. It's definitely things that we learn and kind of write down as we go. The number one reason that we think from the constructor's point of view is definitely bringing the construction manager or contractor on early during the design phase. This can help cut down a lot of the other things I'm going to list as lessons learned. Things like cost of certain details, seeing things ahead of time, looking at details and seeing if they're possible to be built, and things that you would want to do typically in construction, but we don't think is overly important. But in Passivhaus, it is at the forefront for sure in getting ahead of these tricky details. Will help cut down cost. Another one is exploring the Passivhaus model has been something that we just recently tried. We were struggling a lot with ceiling space in one of our buildings, and the insulation in the vent pipes was kind of posing a problem, and we had struggles with holes going through the floor and everything, so that was a problem. So we said, I know it's typically asked for in Passivhaus buildings to insulate those vent pipes, but we said, what is the impact if we didn't? We have to find a balance between cost to remedial certain things and make it work, and how much we're saving. So in that instance, we actually had room in our model. We were doing so well that we were able to delete that. So looking at your model to see if there's any room, it has been very useful.
Right.
What else? Reviewing details is essential, especially around the windows. We have gone through many window details. There's not just one way to do a passive house window, how to tape it. There's many different ways. In the past, I think in our first building, we found that we were overdoing it a bit, doing blue skin and then taping and blue skinning it again. And so really refining our details has been a nice lesson that we've learned. Another important one is schedule. So the schedule, as any construction project, it is very important, but passive house buildings are different in the sense that sequencing is a little bit different. Sometimes you can't go as far on the outside of your building as you want to because you have to do that air test and you don't want to close up all those joints that you might possibly have leakage at. So that created some problems, I will say, on some of our buildings just because of pure design. But that's a huge one. Scheduling is different in passive house buildings.
Right. So, and I've heard this. I've heard people tell me that once they've done a building or two, the first one is the learning curve. That's the education, and then after that, it becomes easier and easier. And everyone I've talked to has said what you said. It really starts with good design. And it starts with bringing the whole team together at the very beginning instead of the traditional way. The architect passes it off to the general contractor who passes it off to the subs, and no one really talks. But it seems to me that passive house, to have a successful passive house project, everybody needs to get together at the very beginning. And which leads me to the comment. I've heard from people who tell me that trades can be an issue for them, and that there's a lack of tradespeople who don't have the passive house training. Has that been your experience, and how do we overcome that?
Well, it's funny because we like to think that we kind of were early to the game here in Hamilton in particular. So in our sense, no one had training except for ourselves and architects and designers. So what we did was we kind of did before you bid the building, we had them come and we gave everybody who was interested an overview, that quick overview on passive house. This is what it is. Don't be scared. We'll all be okay. And then after that was done, we did an in-house training. So we brought in experts, like we brought in our architect, ourselves, because at the time we were still learning, so we didn't consider ourselves good enough to train. So we brought in people and trained those first set of trades. And once they were all on board, then the next building, of course, we have overlap. Some of the same trades came by, and that was easy for us. But again, it's different foremen, it's different laborers. So you retrain them. And the second time, since we were kind of already on our way with passive house buildings, this time we trained. So we kind of figured out what our trades needed to know. We didn't want to overwhelm them with information. We kind of just said, this is what you need to know. This is what's important for you to focus on. And we did that training. It took them probably a day or half a day. We fed them lunch. Everybody was happy. So it's really been a good process, and having them trained is super important because they are the ones doing it. They're the brains behind the operation sometimes. Like, they need to know why and what they're doing.
Do not put a hole through the building envelope. I've heard from other builders that the best supervisors on a passive house building site are other tradespeople who are telling the plumber or the electrician, you can't do that. You've got to go talk to someone. Don't drill that there. And they become the overseers, if you will. A couple of quick comments. I know a plug first is that Passive House Canada is launching our online trades program. So it will be 2 days of online and 1 day in class when we're allowed to gather in groups of more than 5 or 10. So that's really going to be exciting, that we can take what used to be total classroom time, we can do some of it online, and then we'll do some hands-on stuff in a workshop at some point. But the other thing, the first trades course I audited, There were a number of tradespeople there, and I was like to ask them, why were they there? Is it that the boss told them they had to be there, or? But surprisingly, the number of tradespeople I talked to were taking time away from a job and paying for the course out of their own pocket because they were excited what they'd heard about Passivhaus, and they wanted to build to a higher quality. They'd been slapping up homes and buildings, they told me, for many years, and now they see an opportunity to really build quality. And so they wanted to get ahead of the curve. So when they put their name out there to contractors and others, they could say that they'd had Passivhaus Canada. And even if it wasn't building Passivhaus, if it was another type of near zero or high performance, they understand the fundamentals. I think by the end of day 2, that they were so convinced that Passivhaus standards were the way to go that they wouldn't be satisfied working to any other standards. So we got them, and that happens time and again. One of the questions we hear all the time, or we'll probably get it today, is that of cost. And folks, next week's show, we're going to be talking about money. We're going to have 1 or 2 people on who are money people who can talk about a premium, if any, to build a Passivhaus. But Josie, from your perspective, right, how does Passivhaus stand up in terms of cost?
So when we first started our building Parkdale Landing, it was a lot to learn. It was going so fast. Just out of my brain, I would thought, okay, this has got to be 15% higher, right? And I was completely wrong. They ended up doing a study, I want to say a year and a bit later, and they came up, so Parkdale Landing was a retrofit. So we already know retrofitting in general, any type, is sometimes more difficult. So they came in at 4% higher, which is crazy. Number 1, for our first go at it. Number 2, for a retrofit. So we were more than pleased with that. There is, of course, a cost up front just for the pure adding of material. You're adding all this insulation to the exterior that, say I usually put 4 inches in my wall. Now I'm putting 6 inches. That's just an additive right there. Our under slab, we don't always insulate our under slab. So it's just from pure material, that is going to be a cost. But then there are so many other ways to save, whether it be through your mechanical system because it's shrinking in size. There's definitely other ways to save. But in our first few buildings, yes, we definitely do see a little bit of an increase just in pure materials. And the way we're doing things too, we haven't got experience with every single detail. Our first time doing under slab took us way longer to do than our second time doing under slab. Paper barrier tie-ins and insulation. So it definitely, right now, it's still costing us a fraction of a bit more, but we're hoping to get that down to be almost nothing. And that comes with experience and availability and everything.
And the experience of the team working together, I would imagine. And as I said before, we have, some not-for-profit housing corporations who I assume are going to be looking for the best deal they can get to build to quality that they need. But these are not-for-profit organizations, and they're going the Passivhaus route. You've done a good sell job on the benefits of Passivhaus, the long-term benefits of Passivhaus, I suppose.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no.
So we're actually getting almost to the end of our conversation. One last question, sort of. We've talked about the key lessons, some of the key lessons learned. We've talked about affordability. What would be your final comment, your final experiences with Passivhaus? Would you recommend this is the way to go? You better say yes, or I'm going to hit the pause button. What would you, if you were an architect or an engineer or a contractor, is there any sort of words of advice you can give them?
Well, first off, yes, 100% I would recommend. I mean, it's become, I live and breathe Passivhaus now, so I definitely recommend it. I'm not biased at all. I am open to anything and everything that goes towards energy efficiency and saving the planet. But Passivhaus just does make it fairly straightforward and simple. The thing I would say to designers or clients trying to go into this is don't be scared off. It's not veering from anything that you know now. It's just adding to it. It's not, you don't have to veer away from your typical details. You just need to find a way to adapt them to a new standard. If you think about it, it's just taking all that knowledge you have now and being a little bit more careful in terms of thermal bridges are huge, extra insulation, penetrations. It's just those few things. It's not a scary ride. I would say definitely dive into it. As far as we've heard so far, Inwell's very happy with it. I mean, they're still going. And don't let the certification scare you away. I mean, if you're on your way there, maybe for your first building, try to meet those standards, maybe just on your own. And then for the next one, try and get certified. Build yourself up. Don't get scared off at the beginning. I think it's a great thing, and we've seen great changes. I mean, just a fun fact, last winter, or however many winters ago, for our first building, they didn't turn the heat on in the building. So it's really something that is for our future, and don't just do it for new builds, and retrofits are great.
I have a feeling that, well, I know that in the greater Toronto Hamilton area, Enerfit, Passivhaus Enerfit, it's going to be where we make the biggest strides in reducing our GHG emissions and creating all sorts of comfortable places, healthy places to live in. So, so from that perspective, I'm really hoping that we'll have architects and builders take us up on Enerfit standards. And like you said, it's nothing. It's not a steep learning curve to get up to speed with Passivhaus. I hear this from all members of the building industry, and I've not met anybody yet who says they're out to build a lower quality building. You know, everyone I've met to over the years who's in the building industry, architecture, the tradesperson, really wants to build to the highest standard they possibly can. And I think this is what the excitement is about Passivhaus, is that here is a way, here's a path forward. It's not too difficult. It's not really any more expensive, but it gets you the best possible building to get. So, so thanks for your input. And Deb, why don't I turn the floor over to you now? What do we have any questions? I'm sure we do.
Yes, we have a few. Some that were actually addressed, all to do with cost. Just to start off with one comment, definitely worth mentioning, from Winston Churchill: we shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us. So I think earlier on when I believe, Josie, you were talking about the building, someone asked, is this the Parkdale in Toronto?
No. This is Parkdale Avenue in Hamilton, Ontario. All these buildings are in Hamilton so far.
Okay. Hamilton, Ontario. I will say for our friends in Vancouver, Hamilton, Ontario is the hotbed of Passivhaus construction in Canada. There's a little challenge there to Vancouver.
Okay. This is a cost question. You probably addressed this, but I just want to make sure that everything was covered in this. What do you answer when your client asks you for the estimated percentage cost increase to build Passivhaus compared to the baseline?
That's a tricky one to answer them. We haven't really had to do that just yet because the client has come to us and asked to do it. They were set on it. They didn't say how much is this going to cost. They told us we're doing this no matter what. If we had to say that, I would say it can be a big range. I could say between 2 and 10%, with no idea how much it's going to be until we get into the design stage. You can't give them a number until you start going through that design stage to see what kind of details they have. Going forward, it's really hard to just say it right up front. Once you get more into the building, you can give them probably a high level cost estimate. But right off the bat, it's a big range. You could say anywhere between 2 and 10, and you can get it low as long as you're gonna work hard with them in the pre-design stage.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a point. That's a good point Josie raises, that it's about managing the expectations as well of your potential client. If you want a very extravagant building with balconies and all sorts of outcrops, it's going to cost a lot more to get that to Passivhaus standards than if you're building something that is that's a little simpler.
Another question is, does this restrict any aesthetics, including balconies?
It doesn't restrict you from doing them, but it will be a lot of work to do them. I mean, this type of building thrives on simple shapes just for the mere fact that you have to do all this exterior insulation. By all means, you can do balconies. It's just going to cost a little bit more to figure out how to create that thermal bridge in the concrete between the inside of your building and that balcony. It's just going to be a little bit more of a work. So balconies are really important. Be aware that you'll need to invest the time and money to help those details become Passivhaus friendly.
Okay.
Hey, Deb, I'm going to ask a question. Let me ask a question here. I've seen one come up on the screen. I won't tell you the name of the chap who asked it, but he says, YWCA is total precast. What challenges did you have with that? And afterwards, I'm going to tell you who asked that question.
I bet you, is it somebody I know? The total precast. Total precast was more of a challenge, I want to say, in the beginning in the design stages on figuring out how we can link our panels together without breaking that layer of insulation. So once they figured out, because that was really an engineering aspect on how they're going to support both concrete panels with the insulation in the middle without creating a break continuously all the way around. Once they figured that out, the process has been fairly simple in terms of Passivhaus detailing. It makes things for us a lot simpler. We just tape from the inside and we're done. I mean, our whole building's already insulated. In terms of, you know, scheduling and everything, that's a whole different battle, but I don't think it's Passivhaus related in terms of the problems we've been having. They're classic building problems, not Passivhaus issues. I am so far all for the total precast. It's been great.
Great. Back to you, Deb.
Okay, so how does Passivhaus compare to SB10, and how have the municipalities accepted it?
I am not a code expert, so I can't speak exactly how it relates to SB10 perfectly, but in terms of how the City of Hamilton has accepted it, it was a bit of a challenge. Of course, the extra insulation and all that they were fine with. Mechanically, we've had some pushback, but they've adapted pretty well. I know we've been having some pushback in terms of there is AAVs, which are air admittance valves, which sometimes are useful to help stop the air coming through vents. Those were not accepted in the city, but for the most part, it just takes a few conversations, sitting down with the city, explaining the goal and everything. And all it takes is that one time. So if you put in the work that one time to get them familiar with it, the next buildings will come easier. It was like any new proposal you would bring to the city. Anything you're trying to do out of the ordinary just took a little bit of working, and now they're familiar, and I don't think we've had any issues really since.
Okay.
Excellent, and that's good. We have heard from some folks that they run into a bit of trouble because it's a new concept in some municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is we will be launching some training for building officials. We're starting with the Building Officials Association of BC, and we'll be moving that training hopefully at some point across Canada, so that building officials in every jurisdiction will have a better understanding of what we're doing. But what's the next question, Deb?
That's all the questions we have that are on the list here so far.
So well done. Well done. Then we're actually on time. So we will leave it there. And thank you very much, Josie, for visiting with us today and having a great conversation. And congratulations on your career and your focus on Passivhaus. and to Skilthus as well for being a leader in this type of a high performance passive house building and EnerFit retrofits. It is the way of the future. And I'm saying more and more these days that as the federal government signals a green economic recovery, that my strong belief is that that will focus on high performance buildings, passive house buildings, EnerFit retrofit buildings. So anyone who works in the building industry in Canada needs to get on board and get trained up and get ready to catch this next wave of green building, for want of a better phrase. So thank you. Any final comments before we let you go?
No, I think that's good. Other than just out to building people out there and architects and engineers, definitely look into it. And it's up and coming now. So pretty soon it's going to be the standard in terms of what's expected in buildings. So definitely jump on the wave now and get involved. And I mean, it'll get you passionate about it in ways you didn't know. I'm already thinking of ways to build my first passive house for myself. So
wonderful.
It really is. It's all rolling.
A true believer if you're going to build one for yourself. I'm thinking about the same thing myself. So we shall. So thank you very much, and we will turn our cameras off now, and I will proceed to go back to our presentation. And I simply want to let people know that we next week we will be focusing on the money talk, we'll call it. We'll have one or two people, that's their business within their companies is to handle the money, so they know better than anyone any additional cost, if any, for a passive house. I will let people know that these building conversations are recorded, and give us a couple of days and you'll find it on our YouTube channel, Passive House Canada YouTube channel. All of the past conversations are up there, so if you missed any, feel free to log on to YouTube and view our past building conversations. And I wanted to just let people know that we offer all kinds of training, all kinds of information on our website at passivehousecanada.com. You should stop in and explore. There's tons of information about our training, information about standards. We want to bring as many people on board as we possibly can to the passive house way of building. So that's it for today's building conversations. I hope you can find an hour next Wednesday and join us as we talk money. So thank you all and have a good and safe week ahead. Bye-bye.
See ya.